Hello, my name is Cecilia Cipriano, and today I'll be debating against the topic of protest and violence. So growing up, we were always taught to express ourselves and to stand up for what we believed in. However, we were also taught how to productively come up with a plan and behavior in order to do so. So similar to protest, valuable change can only occur when it is well thought out, when it is concise, and when they are clear about their demands. So it's imperative that people who do protest reveal to the public eye the image that they're trying to portray. So today we'll be discussing some reasons why I believe that protest and violence actually do more harm than good in the community. So the first reason I could think of was that the message can get lost in the midst of violence. And we witnessed this firsthand with the latest Black Lives Matter movement. The Black Lives Matter movement was a way for citizens to shed light on the systemic racism, the discrimination, and the police brutality going on in this country. And although these are valid and occurring concerns in this country that need to be addressed, there are ways to go about it productively. Because after some of those unlawful deaths of some of these individuals, cities were getting lost in their rage. So for example, after the murder of George Floyd, there was an immediate aftermath of riots, protests, and violence. Researchers say there are over 164 fires due to arson after his death, and this took out homes, took out minority-owned businesses, federal agencies, nonprofit organizations, schools, and local officials have declared that it could take up to 10 years to reverse the damage done by the protests and violence in the Minneapolis area. So according to Stanford University, such violence tends to lead the opposing side to view them as unreasonable. It could also lead people to identify with them less. People should be afraid of losing that credibility, especially when trying to pass on such a strong message. The number one first priority in deeming a successful protest is actually the dialogue. And according to the International Affairs, there should be professional leaders of these organizations who are continuously going over and strengthening and facilitating the dialogue between the federal government and the citizens. So overall, it's important to recognize that anarchy and violent strategies have proven to become an actual counterproductive attempt at permanent change and reform. And it's important to climb that ladder of power peacefully until your voice is heard, because I truly believe that this will build the best credibility. Another reason that these actions can be viewed as detrimental is due to the lasting effects of protests on one's mental health. So according to the Australian and New Zealand Journal of Psychiatry, violent protests are actually comparable to natural disasters and terrorist attacks regarding similar mental health outcomes. And this is why it is so crucial, especially as a clinician, to be vigilant of the psychiatric consequences from these movements. And it often puts a lot of people in stress, even if you're just in the surrounding community, especially when it's going up in flames. So research has actually showed that even those who do not participate in the protests still experience psychiatric turmoil, with 7% of individuals having a higher prevalence of major depression disorder. And the research also found that and emphasized the prevalence of post-traumatic stress disorder in riot-affected areas, went from 4% to 41%. This data can be explained through many valuable reasons. I mean, just experiencing a traumatic, violent event can affect every aspect of your life, especially when you aren't provided with the necessary resources. So another argument I want to bring up is that I want to impose some thoughts of a social worker on addressing the issue at hand. So our job as a social worker is to help people solve their problems and to shed light on the injustices of the world. We are required to pursue a master's degree for a heavy amount of the jobs in the field, because we have to work diligently and strategically when tackling these problems. We have to keep the client's best interest in mind always, especially when challenges arise. So after reading the research on the harmful effects of protesting on one's mental health, I think it's important to redirect these individuals. We can teach them things such as strong communication and comprehension skills, goal-directed behaviors, problem-solving solutions. And it's important to connect with people who are striving for change and master the media outreach, but these things can also be done through social media and reaching out to policymakers and familiarizing oneself with policy and procedures. Overall, protests and violence have caused damage to the cities of this nation, and it does a poor job when trying to pass on a powerful message. I provided strong research that reveals the more productive avenues that one can take when striving for policy change and reform.